Hi guys, and welcome to our first look at Adventure Tactics, Domianne's Tower. There's actually so much game here, it's actually kind of embarrassing to admit that I've spent the last 2 years working on this game. But this has been a passion project for me, and also Dan Lightstring, who's going to be publishing it through Letiman Games. So, you can see all the splendor before you. This is about half of the game. It has all the base components for classes, but it's only about half of the full content in terms of enemies and scenarios. But people are really interested to know how the game works, so I want to review one of the cores of the class, which is the job building system, or the class system. So you have your basic classes, very familiar archetypes, like you have your archer, that's your main range guy. You have your rogue, stabby up close and high single target damage. Wizard, control guy, and area damage. Fighter, she's very tanky, good at melee, and cleric, healer, and support. So you can see that each of these cards has some symbols on them. In the top left banner, this is their basic attack die. They have their range, like cleric has a range of 1 to 3 and a movement of 3. So range is how many squares away the target can be. Movement is how far you move. And again, that's your basic attack value. You can see we have some different custom dice. White is only 1 to 3, so it's a D3. Red is very consistent. It has the same average value as a normal D6, 3.5, but it only goes from 2 through 5, so it's very consistent. There's no 1 or 6. Black is kind of the opposite. It's also a 3.5 average, but there's 2 1s and 2 6s, and then a 2 and a 5, so it's very swingy. Blue is overall the best die. There's no 1, but there's also no 6, but the values just go from 3, 4, 5, so the average is 4.5 on that one, so it's overall the best die, but it doesn't swing as high as the black die, which is the only one with a value of 6 on it. So those are the basic classes. There are also over 20 classes overall. You have lots of fun elite classes like Assassin, Bishop, Ranger. I'm not going to go through them all, but I'll point out some of my favorite ones. Like Dan's favorite, one of his favorite art is the Warlock. She has a summon, this Paladin, like if you go Fighter and Cleric. Beast Trainer, that's also another pet class. So again, you can see there are so many classes, all gorgeously illustrated by Jacob Croft, who's very talented, and he is going to blow up. So you can also see the pets. These are illustrated by Calico Meyer. Beast Companion for the Beast Trainer, Imp for the Warlock, and Necromancer has some skeletons. So how does class system work? So each level that you have, each character level you have is represented by a class card. And that tells you exactly what you get in that class. So let's say eventually I want to work towards Dark Knight. It tells me on the bottom eventually I need to have both letters in Fighter and Wizard. So the bleed is a little off on this, so I apologize. Obviously they'll be fixed in the final. This is a prototype. So you see the little lock symbol you need, or unlock symbol rather. You need Fighter 1 and Wizard 1 to be level 1 Dark Knight. So my hypothetical character, I would have both Fighter and Wizard. So you can see starter's a little bit different. You get more abilities and more base based off of what's your initial class. You'll never switch from one of the basic classes into another basic class, but when you do take an elite class, that becomes your active class. So let's say I did go Fighter, Wizard, Dark Knight would be my new class. So you can see they have a new attack value, basic attack value of white and red dice. The range is 1 to 2, so if you were a fighter, it goes up a little bit. If you're a wizard, it goes down a little bit, and the movement is now 4. But that also determines your hit point gain. So you get 7 hit points to start as a fighter. Multi-classing in wizard doesn't really help too much with hit points. It's only +2, but then going to Dark Knight would give you a +4. There's a few other symbols in there, but let me explain the action system first. Everything in Adventure Tactics, the actions that you take on your turn are card-based. On your turn, you will draw 4 cards and play up to 2. And then you also discard 1 at the end of your turn to kind of sift through. So you can see at least 3 new cards because you always draw up to your maximum hand size, which starts at 4, but there are abilities that can, or items that can influence your hand size. So you can see everyone always starts off with 3 basic attacks and 3 basic moves. So basic move just says, okay, my movement is 4, so make a basic move, you can move up to 4. Movement is orthogonal, and range is normal range. We did that to be a little more generous because counting out squares, if you remember from Final Fantasy Tactics, that can get a little messy when you're trying to figure that out in your head. So for ease of board gaming, movement we kept orthogonal because diagonal movement's kind of broken, and but range is just any amount of squares away that you can count up. So that's basic move, and make a basic attack is just to take the basic attack that's outlined on your card. So Dark Knight, range of 1 to 2, so either adjacent anywhere or 1 square away, 1 square further away, so 1 to 2, and then you would roll white and red die for their basic attack. So that everyone gets those, the 3 basic moves and 3 basic attacks. Now you see what else you get as a fighter, right? Now you get 2 rock tosses, another basic attack, and 2 charges. So I've already set those aside. Get a couple rock tosses, which is a mediocre ranged attack. Mediocre might be pushing it, but that's a callback to a lot of your favorite games like Final Fantasy Tactics, where you toss a stone if you start off as a fighter, soldier type, or squire in the case of Tactics. So it's range 3, right? And you roll a white die. So you get 2 of those. And it's some options, especially early on when as a fighter you wouldn't have any other ranged options. Sometimes you actually really want that rock toss. Charge is make a basic move +1 in one direction. You may move through other characters. Normally, other characters, enemies block your movement, so charge allows you to move through them, and also add extra movement, but you have to just go in a straight direction. So fighter gets 2 of those, and they get an extra basic attack. There's a few other things on there. They also get a passive called Tough, which is this little guy, and that just means you have +3 maximum hit points. So when you look at the playmat, you'll see where things go, right? So you have your class, and then you also have room for some things over here. Passive, there's 3 slots for passive abilities and 2 slots for dice abilities. So you would just slot that right there, and as long as you had that slotted, you would have 3 maximum hit points, in addition to whatever you normally get through leveling up. You'll see, again, they're limited. It's very possible if you level up and you change a lot of different classes, you'll have mini passives, but you only can have 3 active at a time. Same thing with dice abilities. You can only have 2 active at a time. Now there is one other blank square, and that's for your class feature. Fighter starts off with something called Shake It Off, and that's a self-heal. You can either use it to heal on your turn, or you can use it in response when you're damaged. So there are some special symbols on here. Again, as I said, you can take 2 actions on your turn, which is basically playing 2 cards. But some cards also have this little yellow star, and that means it's a free action. It does not count as one of your actions, so you could play this and then still play 2 cards. There's also a little X on there. That means remove from the scenario. So it's basically an encounter-based cooldown. So you can use it for that fight, but you won't have it until the next one. This one, it has a dual use. There's also that little blue shield with a reply. Basically, that's a response. So this one you can also use it as a free action on your turn, or also you can use it when you're damaged. You can also heal for a red die. This one also has a remove on it. So the playmat, as you can see, has little reference numbers, or little reference guides, a legend, so you don't have to remember those off the top of your head. You'll notice there is a space for the class feature right there, and basically that card gets preloaded. Same thing for equipment once you start earning that from defeating enemies. So that card stays out there. It doesn't, you won't draw it normally in your hand, but you can use it, and then you'll notice the back is the same as the rest of the cards, so then it just goes into your deck. As you level up into other classes, you'll potentially get many other class features. Each new class also adds another class feature. So let's say I'm going to go Dark Knight, right? So I want to level up in Wizard next. That gives me a few cards. That gives me a Fireball and a Teleport, which are great, and we're happy to have them. Teleport, it's a free ability. You see the little yellow star, and it has a range of 8, so big range. Exchange positions with another player in range. So teleport. You teleport and exchange places with someone else. Fireball, it's a blue die. It's a ranged attack with a range of 4. And you also see this little explosion. That's an AoE of 1. So not only does it affect the target square, it also affects 1 square around where it's targeted. And as a wizard, you get Arcane Shield. It's another class feature, and it's a response. When you're attacked, you can ignore white die +1. So if I'm a level 1 fighter, level 1 wizard, I have both Shake It Off and Arcane Shield. I choose which one at the beginning of every encounter or every scenario. I choose which one I want to preload. So whether that's Arcane Shield, Shake It Off, and then the other one either goes into my deck as a normal card, or I can choose to set it aside. Wizard also gets a couple other fun things, or one more fun thing at least. It's called Blink. I don't think I grabbed it, but you can see the giant stack of passives. So, Wizard, Wizard. Here is Blink. Once per turn, you may use 1 square of movement to move diagonally. So, sometimes you can move diagonally, and the Wizard, he can kind of slide sideways, or slide diagonally. So that's everything I get from being multi-classing into Wizard. You'll notice it's a little different from the starter Wizard because you don't get as many cards when you multi-class into another basic card. And that's just so you don't dilute your deck unnecessarily. Finally, you'll notice there's another difference too. These symbols here, plus and minus, that adds another element of deck building besides leveling up your actions through different classes. That plus means you can add another basic attack or basic movement. So if you feel that your deck is lacking either one of those, you can add another one. Some classes will specialize in basic attacks, or some you may find that your movement is lacking, so you can always add another one. And then also there's a minus, which means you can cull any one card permanently. So even if 2 people played this game and they leveled up the same way, they could actually have very different decks, especially as they keep going in, they keep adding or removing cards. Finally, I'm going to go Dark Knight. It's my elite class. So then my class would change from fighter to Dark Knight. And level 1 Dark Knight gives you a new class feature called Damage Shield. So it's a remove. I'm sorry, this is a response. That's actually a mistake. We'll get that fixed. It's not removed. It's a response. When targeting range is damaged, deal black and white die damage to source. So reminder, ask Jason Kingsley, who's done an excellent job on these, to change that to a response. So within range 5. So I apologize again. This is a prototype. It's a good thing that we could catch that now, right before the final product. So hopefully that gives you a quick look at how classes and levels work. You can see this giant stack of level up cards. You can go from 1 to 5 in any given class. So you can see if you start off as War Mage, it's an elite class that requires 1 level 1 fighter, 1 level 1 wizard, 1 level 1 rogue, and then you can go 1 through 5. That's the progression through War Mage. This is the giant stack of different action cards. This game is a beast. It has close to, I think, 700 cards. You can see, as you saw earlier, the stack of passes. There's another stack of dice abilities, the dice. So basically these affect rolls. For example, the rogue eventually gets one called Backstab, where you deal an additional black die damage to an adjacent target if another player is adjacent to that target. So that, if you're familiar with D&D or on Pathfinder, that's your flanking side mechanic. The next time, I think we'll go into combat. You can see these cool initiative cards that represent the player and the bosses. Also, each encounter has a separate boss deck. So this is one of the first encounters you can face, which is Rigby. So you can see each boss has 10 cards, or most bosses have 10 cards. And then it's fully co-op, so there's an AI. You just flip the card over and then you do what the card tells you to do for the enemies. There is a scenario guide that's already over 60 pages, but it'll tell you how to set up the encounter. And of course, this is not final formatting and what the enemies can do. So we're going to have little reference cards for the bosses. There's damage counters, status counters, all sorts of fun things, but I think that should give you a pretty good introduction to Adventure Tactics, Domianne's Tower.